Alright, so hey guys, today I am doing my second review of American Horror Story, which is now titled American Horror Story Roanoke. Just HS Roanoke. It's not my Roanoke Nightmare, anything like that. And this is chapter 2. So anyway, this episode started off where the other one left off. We have Shelby back in the woods where we last saw her with the character. We still don't know the name of Kathy Bates' character yet, but yeah, it's Kathy Bates' character, the creepy witchy character or whatever, and they are having a sacrifice or whatever, I guess you could call it. Anyway, there is the pig man or whatever before he became pig man. They are calling him out for being a thief or whatever, and they start calling him a beast. They put a pig head on him and they pin a pigtail to him with nails, like to his actual skin, and they begin burning him on the splint or whatever you call it, that weird figure or whatever, I can't think of what you call it, but they start hanging him on that and burning him alive. Shelly is freaked out. Kathy Bates' character notices her and starts calling out some type of chant. Don't know what she was saying, but she calls out a chant to her, or anyway, and they were calling him a clothing beast, so that's why he was dressing in pig garb or whatever. So Kathy Bates' character notices Shelby. Shelby starts screaming, running, and Lee finds her in the middle of the road. Lee takes her to the hospital, and they are, when Matt goes to visit her in the hospital, they are still thinking that everything is caused by the backwoods guy, who we later find out his name is Ishmael, and I can't remember his kid's name or whatever. So the doctors don't believe Shelby's story, of course. They think she's making it up, she's crazy, and they just decide that they're gonna have to fight it through. So back at the house, Lee is reflecting on custody of her daughter because she has joint custody with her ex-husband Mason, and she is anticipating a visit from her daughter Flora. So, she brings her daughter Flora to the house. She remarks that Flora is good at, adapting to new places, and she feels like as long as she keeps Flora, within her eyesight and close to her, that she can protect her, that nothing will get to her. So after Flora gets there, she's playing with her toys with Lee. Lee goes off to make lunch, and when she comes back, she finds Flora's jacks in the floor, but Flora is gone. So, she wanders off to find where Flora is. She hears Flora talking in the living room, and Flora tells her that she's talking to her friend Priscilla. And she says that it's like a ghost, imaginary friend. We assume it's a ghost. And she tells Flora that she will make her a bonnet if she can make the blood stop. So, as Flora is telling Lee that they hear a crash in the other room, Lee goes to investigate. She finds the window open and blowing, and there is a broken vase on the floor with a bonnet beside it. So as Lee is looking at the bonnet, there is an eerie black figure in the living room where Flora is. So when Shelby, I always call her Shell in my notes, when Shelby and Matt get back, they're wondering why Lee brought her daughter, knowing everything's going on in the house, and Matt's just like, she wants to be with her daughter. So they start talking about wanting to sell the house again. And later on that night, they start hearing the pig noises and the squeals and everything again. Shell goes out to investigate, and Matt follows. They're calling out to the noise. They end up in the woods. They almost get lost. A wild hog runs out of nowhere, and Shell gets lost. Shell ends up finding the splint from earlier in the episode with the burning pig body on it and scraps of his flesh or whatever hanging, and Matt finds it and they both see it, so they call the cops. Of course, the cops are like, oh, it's that guy, Ishmael and his family, and Shelby starts yelling at them, like, what if this burned down our house? What are you guys gonna do about this? They tell Shelby that, they're gonna get somebody there. They're gonna have a 24-hour police detail on the house right there in the front yard. So later on that night, when they're in bed, Matt gets a call on the phone, and he goes downstairs to answer it. And it's an old rotary telephone. He hears an old lady saying, please stop hurting me. And after she hangs up, Matt notices that the phone was never plugged in. So Matt goes to investigate the noise that he hears in the background. He ends up seeing the two nurses that Shelby saw in the very first episode. And he wanders into the room. They have the old woman on a hospital bed and they are torturing her. The old lady is asking them to please stop torturing her. And they both say, oh, was that back talk or whatever? And they shoot the old woman, and her name is Margaret. They end up writing an M on the wall in red spray paint or whatever. So Matt runs out to go get the policeman who was on detail to investigate. Once the police investigates, he finds out that there's nothing there. Matt starts to wonder if he has a neurological disorder from the being mugged back in California, and Lee realizes that if Shelby and Matt keep, calling the police every time something goes on, the police are gonna stop believing them. They're gonna think they're insane. And so the next day, Mason comes back to get Flora. Flora has disappeared once again. Lee remarks that she is playing surprise hide and go seek, a game that she has been perfecting since she was 3 years old. They follow the noises. They find her in this little closet on in the hallway. I guess it would have been a dummy waiter. If you don't know what a dummy waiter is, it's one of those little what do you call it? It's like a little elevator that they had in the old days, and they would put food, it would be downstairs, and when they had maids or whatever, the maids or whatever would put food in there, and then they'd press the button and it would go up to the next floor or whatever, so they wouldn't have to walk in big houses. And they hear Flora and they're talking. Lee opens up and Flora's like, where'd she go? And they're like, who? And Flora's like, Priscilla, I was gonna give her my doll. And they're like, you're gonna give her your doll? And she's like, yeah, she said if I give her my doll, she won't murder all of us. So it's like, oh my God. And Mason flips out when he hears that. Flora's said that she was gonna give the doll in exchange for all of their lives, and she said that Priscilla told her she would save her for last. Mason freaks out, snatches his daughter up. Lee's pleading for him to bring her back. He's like, where would she get that from? He thinks that Lee is putting this stuff into her head, and he obviously doesn't think it's safe for his daughter there anymore. So he takes her away. Lee is freaking out because he's threatening to, pursue full custody of Flora. Lee, after they leave, Lee relapses back into alcohol. She's in the kitchen drinking and throwing dishes. And, Shell comes in and, she's like, I'm sorry, I broke your bowl. And Shelby notices knives in the ceiling. And, Lee's like, I didn't do that. And they're like, sure you didn't. And Matt's like, he knows that when he gets drunk, sometimes he does things that he doesn't remember or whatnot. And he worries about Lee. So he goes upstairs to put Lee to bed, so she can sleep off the hangover or whatever. And, he leaves because he remarks that Lee has always been the rock of the family, so it's kind of shocking to see her, break down. Once he leaves, because Shelby starts calling him, he goes downstairs to see what she wants. Lee is laying in the bed, and the two ghost nurses come into the room while Lee is sleeping and stand over her laughing and stuff. So while Matt's downstairs with Shelby, Matt realizes Shelby's looking out the window, and she asks Matt if he sees what she sees. There is who I assume is Priscilla, the little ghost girl, standing out in the distance. So they go to investigate. They end up being led to the cellar or whatever, and they find, food and the video camera. It's a VHS camera, which obviously is old. And, they notice that somebody's been living there, obviously. Once they watch the video on the VCR, they find Dennis O'Hare's character, whose name is Elias Cunningham, and he is on the video talking. He says that the malevolent forces in the house, forced him out. He doesn't feel safe in there. He is a professor who is writing a true crime novel or something like that, and he had brought his subjects to the house, his subjects being the two nurses, and he keeps remarking that he's not crazy. And of course, Shelby and Matt believe him because they're going through what he's going through. So the two nurses, their names are Miranda and Bridget Jane. They were sisters and nurses. They had been at a hospital, at an assisted living facility for elderly folks. and they had been, they had ran because they had been killing people. So when they moved to North Carolina in the farmhouse, they had decided to start over again. They created another assisted living home, and they only brought in people with the initials that spell out murder. So they had been murdering a woman named Eunice or something. They had been murdering all type of people, and they started over, and Margaret was the M or whatnot, and they ended up disappearing before they could finish the word. They had M-U-R-D-E, but they didn't get the other R because they vanished. And this is what Elias is writing his book about. So, that was kind of crazy or whatnot. It was in October 1989, the cops came, and whenever they'd paint over the words murd, because it couldn't spell murder, it would always reappear. No matter who moved in and painted over it, it would always reappear. So that explains the wallpaper that Shelley and Matt had. Matt realizes that the M is for Margaret, the Margaret that he saw that night. He goes off to investigate once again. Matt goes out to investigate. They run to the house. They start removing the wallpaper off of the walls, and of course, the murd is still there. So, Elias also remarks that the family that lived there before Margaret and Bridget was a family with a husband, a wife, and a young daughter. So maybe that's Priscilla, maybe not. Anyway, Elias didn't go back to the house because he believed that a force, one of the forces of nature or ghost or spirit, is what stopped the two nurses from murdering the last victim or whatever. So as he is recording this, he ends up switching the camera to night vision, and you hear noises after him or whatever, and he's looking into a mirror at one instance, and he's reaching out his hand, and next thing you know, a ghostly figure, a face appears beside him. Shelby starts screaming. Now the figure looks like Kathy Bates' character or whatever. Shelby starts screaming. They hear a noise in the house. They go to investigate. It is a bloody butcher's axe in the door. So now, they want to leave. They want to move from the house. They did more research, and they end up talking to the bank because they want to sell the house back. The guy from the bank's like, nope, you can't do it. You're here for good unless you want to sell it to somebody else because we can't take it back. And Shelby remarks that the reason, they couldn't find out any information about the house at first was because the bank changed the address of the house, but everything else added up, like, the murders and the nurses and all that stuff all made sense. So, the bank pretty much tells them, well, if you want to sell the house, we'll give the next person a good deal, but we can't take it back. So they're trapped. So as they're in the house, they're still assuming, Ishmael and them, they'll want to buy it back or whatever. Lee ends up driving back to the house. She pulls up, and would you believe it, she has Flora in the car. She has committed felony kidnapping and kidnapped her own daughter. So Matt's, of course, freaking out because his sister can be arrested for kidnapping her own child, of course. And so, Shelby ends up taking Flora, to do her homework. She calls Mason, explains where Flora is, and convinces him not to call the cops. So Lee is a little bit relieved about that, and, Flora is off playing. She was supposed to be doing homework, but she hears giggling. She goes off to the window and she sees the ghost girl, or Priscilla. In the distance, she wanders off to follow her, and the family goes out into the woods to search for Flora. As Lee is walking past a tree, a particular tree, there are pigtails wiggling, and there is the pig head hanging on the tree or whatever. So they freaking, as Matt and Lee are still running after her to find out where she is, they hear Lee let out like a blood-curdling scream. And Flora's hoodie is on that same tree with the pigtails, with the waggling pigtails, at the very top of the tree. So, of course, and that is where the episode ends, which I hate. The episodes have been ending really early. They end at like 10:54. Now all of a sudden, and then it's like a 6-minute break, and then they show like the scenes from the next episode. So in the next episode, they're discussing the fear of losing a child. Matt remarks how nothing makes sense once you're in the forest. It's like you're in a different dimension, everything's different. And we see that Lee, in present tense, telling the story, Lee is yelling at the producers or directors to turn off the camera, and she keeps repeating that. So we really don't know what's going on. Anyway, we did see some more characters this episode. We saw more of Dennis O'Hare, Lady Gaga. I think she may have been one of the backgrounders with Kathy Bates' character, and it still says Evan Peters, but I haven't seen him yet. And Wes Bentley was there, of course, and it also says Cheyenne Jackson, but I haven't seen him yet either. So anyway, that was a pretty good episode, but some things that I want to talk about. I missed the theme song. I really don't feel like when I'm watching this, I don't feel like I'm watching American Horror Story. I feel like I'm watching a spin-off. It just doesn't have that creepy American Horror Story like essence that I've been used to for all these years since season 1. But I mean, I like it. It's okay, you know, because I do like watching these type TV shows anyway. So I'm not too angry. But yeah. So you guys, that was my review. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more of these reviews and these recaps, or if you want to see more about the episode, or you want to discuss, because I love discussing it. I used to always talk about it on Tumblr, but it's been kind of dead lately. I don't know if people are just not watching this season or what, but I just can't really talk to people much. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye!